Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. Adam Winters and Joe Gould here once more. Today we're going to be talking about Godzilla Tokyo S.O.S. from 2003 and one of the last movies in the Millennium series.
But the movie is set in 2004.
Yeah, they didn't quite get any of those release dates versus titles accurate, did they?
And I noticed
like a year
in the
off
title,
in the Millennium.
In Japanese, Mothra is named in the title, but she doesn't get to make the cut for the English translation of that. Also, Mechagodzilla, Mecha-G, MXG, or what is it called? XMG is in the title, Japanese, but
they
did
couldn't
not
even
get top billing.
They couldn't even decide what they wanted to call him in the Japanese version.
Fair enough.
I'd say Mothra has always been underrated in the United States, but I own the movies, but I can't say I've watched them in the last 20, 25 years.
Me neither. So. That Blu-ray 3-pack is sitting around, yet to be watched.
Yeah.
I opened it because I wanted to check if there was a digital code inside, but it did not have one. So that's the only reason it was open.
Well, at least you'd be following the law in that case. How's your week been, Adam?
Well, the grind at the library, a lot of dusty old books. The more I work around books, the less I sort of want to own for myself. But I've got plenty of other stuff piling up around me. Video games, DVDs, mail I haven't thrown out yet for one reason or another. Also, Coca-Cola plastic bottle caps that I keep telling myself I'm going to enter the digital codes for these online one day, but I never have, so there's that.
Well, next thing you know, you'll be clipping out old coupons for cereal from 1990s magazines and seeing if they'll honor the coupon.
I still have a bag of those in my vehicle. I would be disappointed if it got broken into and stolen, but yeah, those are still around. I have not checked the eBay market for those yet either.
I would be pretty alarmed if someone broke into your vehicle and that is what they stole.
People are just mean that way. When they're coked up or cracked up, it don't matter.
That's like the mean streets of Louisville.
No doubt.
Yeah, we were in Knoxville, Tennessee this weekend. Had an alumni event and a gala to go to.
Did you watch any of the basketball team, the potentially national championship contending basketball team?
So after the gala was over, we went to a bar is a strong word, but it was a restaurant that had a bar. It might be a better way of putting it. Because one of the professors there was in a band and they were going to be playing for a little bit, so we went to see them. And we caught the last 6 or 7 minutes of the game. So, yep.
Good baseball and softball teams this year, too, I might add.
We are, with possible rare exception, we're pretty good across the board. Like, we're a solid top. Women's basketball, I'm not really sure where we fall on that right now. There's only 20 good teams, so I like to think we're in the top 20. But overall, we're a top 10, top 15 school in pretty much all the sports.
And assuming that NCAA legal challenge works itself out, great chance at the football run next year.
Well, it pretty much already has. NCAA announced they are suspending all NIL investigations.
Well, there you go.
They have no chance. They also have no authority to do anything. So there's going to be 2 super conferences within 5 years.
Yeah, that's going to be a mess.
I think it's
going to
fine.
be a mess. But at least we don't have
teams.
to suffer through the horrible bowl games of everybody sitting their players out.
If you told yourself, hey, instead of all this weird stuff and we're going to have people like Boise State fighting me in the top 5 and that kind of thing, that you just take the top 6 or 7 schools in the SEC and the Big Ten and make a playoff out of it, and then maybe 2 or 3 at large for a few other teams, it's you're getting it basically right.
And yet the conference championship will probably matter less than ever, though, actually winning the conference title.
Well, yeah. Gotta follow the money.
Oh, that's the truth. So how much money did this movie make? Godzilla S.O.S.
It made Let me find my note. 1.3 billion yen, which is not
That's probably like
useful for us.
10% of that is American dollars, or like a
Here we
billion
go.
is.
All right, so it released on December 13th, 2003. It was a double feature with the animated film Hamtaro, Ham Ham Grand Prix, and
I remember that
opening
scene
weekend.
from.
Go ahead.
No, I remember that cartoon. I thought it was a joke. I never could bring myself to watch it.
Yeah, so opening weekend, it was third place at their box office with the equivalent of $1.7 million. Its total gross was $12 million and it had 1.1 million admissions. I do not have the budget for that one, but if it was similar to the last movie, then they probably spent 6 to 7 million on it.
I'm assuming Hamtaro beat it at the box office. I wonder what else kept it out of the top spot.
Yeah, I don't know.
Are we talking about only Japanese films when we say the Japanese box office, or is it potentially American movies and anything else could be running there too?
Well, this movie did not release in the U.S. So
no, but when we say the Japanese box office,
I'm probably oversimplifying. We'll put international box office at 12 million.
All right.
I would say, I mean, if more than if that's not at least 90% of the box office, I'd be pretty surprised though.
All right.
But before I forget, Kiryu is referred to as Mecha G in the subtitles. And this was done because they were afraid that people who hadn't watched the last movie wouldn't understand what it was going on. Probably they could have explained it, I suppose. And also because if they called him Mechagodzilla, their mouths would not match the audio.
Yeah.
Which might be the first time a Godzilla movie has ever cared about audio and the visual aligning. I'm not sure.
Curiously, there are several Anglo English-speaking actors in this movie that I think are speaking English, but they've been redubbed into different English-speaking voices.
Very frustrating. Very, very frustrating.
There was a vintage, I believe it's Invasion of the Astro Monster, had that problem too, where you cast an American who's clearly speaking English, but he's been redubbed into New English.
Okay. And then last thing on the releases, Sony released it as a Blu-ray in 2014. That's the one I watched, and it's packaged together with Godzilla Final Wars.
Oh,
it does have, both versions have the same behind-the-scenes featurette that you were talking about. It's like 22 minutes. I watched, it was I have not spent a lot of time on the internet looking at old backstage footage, Godzilla events or Godzilla movies and things like that. So if you've never watched one of those things, it is pretty interesting. I think what stood out to me though was it's hard to express just how short these clips are when they're recording this. Like if these are common things, like they're doing a lot of different takes that are like 5 to 6 seconds long. And basically, based off the sets, it really does look like they get one shot, and that's it. They got their $100 prop, and it's going to get destroyed, and then they're moving on to the next scene.
And they use a lot of slow-mo for those toppling scenes and everything else, because they got to get the most out of that shot for the runtime.
And that was the other thing I noticed, was I just always assumed that the Godzilla actors walked slowly. No. They walk regular speed. Godzilla moves pretty quick clip, and then they just slow it down, which makes sense because then the building falls slower and it takes up more time.
But I think that's an old Hollywood trick too. You actually do it either full speed or quicker, so that it will be somehow easier to slow it down in slow motion. Very interesting.
Well, I think what it is it's probably very hard to maintain a consistent slow speed if you're slowing yourself down. Whereas if you're just walking at your normal, pace, then if they slow that down, it's not going to be like stop, go. Oh, they sped up for a second, that kind of thing. That's my opinion. I'm sticking to it.
They need to send the CGI people those notes for Godzilla X Kong when they do their running animation. The internet's so up in arms about. I feel like if I had a bucket, I feel like if I had a bucket list, I'd want to go back in time and be on the set for one of these movies just to witness this
Oh,
spectacle.
I'd love it. See if there's any other non-plot related things. So I did find an interview with, well, not an interview with, it was more of an article about with a few quotes with the director, Masaki Tezuka. And it was kind of a general article or a general interview kind of thing discussing his time on, because this is actually his third film that he directed.
He did the last one.
Well, no, he didn't do the last one. He did
What?
Godzilla versus Megaguirus, and he did Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla in this one. So he didn't do the All Monsters Attack.
You sure? No. We're talking about Against Mechagodzilla, right? He did that one.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I misheard you. I thought you meant the. Yeah.
We're considering this all one big movie, like Lord of the Rings, Part 1 and 2.
Basically, it's basically what it is. So, anyways, it's very interesting. I wish I had read this or found this when we were talking about the last movie. So, just a few random things, and this is kind of discussing all three. So, one of the things he said was the hardest to film was due to the budget issues. Was recreating panicky evacuation scenes. So I guess the Japanese film industry never had large budgets after the 50s and 60s, so that's what made it difficult. So this is his quote: "They're actually hard scenes to shoot. Back when Ishiro Honda was shooting the original Godzilla movies, they were able to gather about 500 to 600 extras with payment.
Wow.
But with the ever-declining Japanese movie budget, we have to ask for the diehard Godzilla fans to show up, and we would give them the little lunchbox and a t-shirt with Godzilla on them."
Oh my gosh, that'd be awesome. I wonder if they also got the baseball caps with the JXSDF on it.
Yeah. All right, here's
I
another
found
quote.
out what that means, by the way. Yeah, that was kind of weird, too.
What does it mean?
Japan Xenomorph Self-Defense Force. They had it's in a logo in this movie where it says that.
Yeah, I think I saw that. I didn't put the connection to the hat, but yeah.
That's it. Xenomorph.
See here, in regards to monster fights, this is not the quote. The monster fights in this film and its follow-up, Godzilla Tokyo S.O.S., so this is talking about Against Mechagodzilla, were a deliberate attempt to recapture some of the over-the-top excitement of the older Godzilla films. For example, at one point, the cyborg Godzilla swings the real Godzilla by his tail, an action previously seen in King Kong vs. Godzilla, which ranks high on Tezuka's personal list. Here's the quote: "The first Godzilla definitely is a masterpiece, but King Kong vs. Godzilla is my favorite."
Good taste.
He might be the only person who's ever said that.
Oh, come on. It's a classic.
It's a classic in some ways.
It's a cult classic. Can't be
It'd
classic.
be more of a classic if it wasn't King Kong. It's fine. It's fine. It's a good movie. Underrated, but not one of the best.
I didn't know if he intentionally did that tail swinging scene, but
he did.
It sounds like, that was an intentional reference to the King Kong movie.
Here's another one which we explicitly talked about this. This is not the quote. "Unfortunately, the script is marred by some overly sentimental elements apparently added to broaden the film's appeal to family audiences. Perhaps the worst example is a plant belonging to motherless child, which bears a heavier symbolic burden than it can handle. Quote, the plant definitely symbolizes the missing mother's presence in this little kid's life. Originally, we did the research, and there's a plant called the dancing plant. But after we got it, it didn't move at all, so it couldn't play that character."
Oh, so are they saying sleeping grass is not real? I thought that was a real plant they put in the movie.
Well, it didn't do what they thought it was going to do. Maybe that was a stand-in. Maybe they're going to use the other plant first, and that's why he says it didn't play the character.
It might be a real plant, but it was not an actor plant, so it was not didn't play the part. Okay.
So then,
fair enough.
All right. So he got demoted after the Megaguirus movie.
Yeah, because they fired the special effects guy on that, didn't they? The Megaguirus.
Well,
they blamed him for it.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember who. You're probably right. But I can't recall exactly. So, anyways, Tezuka had to sit out the next film, and they gave it to Shusuke Kaneko, who had directed the Gamera films in the 90s. And this is the Giant Monsters All Out Attack. Although demoted from the director's chair, Tezuka still worked on the film, supervising the composite footage. When asked whether he learned anything from working side by side with Kaneko, who is highly regarded by fans for his serious approach to the giant monster genre, Tezuka betrayed perhaps a hint of directorial ego aimed at his rival. I didn't learn anything at all. It was more like giving him the support, because we are the same age and we assist directed on the same movie together. So I just went out there for 10 days, and we shot about 200 shots to help him out. But personality-wise, we're totally opposite. He's very serious. I'm not so serious. And then,
Interesting.
So then going into the movie we're actually looking at, Tokyo S.O.S., this is not the quote, but it's talking about. In another amusing piece of continuity, Godzilla's presence off the coast of Japan is first suggested when the dead carcass of a giant sea turtle washes ashore, obviously killed by something even bigger than itself. The visual joke is that, at first glance, the turtle appears to be Dai Studio rival's monster Gamera, but it's actually from a less well-known Toho production, 1971 Space Amoeba, known in the US as Yog, Monster from Space. Said Tezuka, quote, "Initially I wanted to bring back Anguirus, but the producer at the meeting said no. Because Anguirus is such a famous monster, if we show him as a carcass, the fans are going to be mad. So I decided instead, we'll have the Space Amoeba. But Tezuka insisted with a laugh, it's not Gamera."
Now, Megalomatata is, I guess I should say, this space turtle. No, not space turtle. This mutant turtle has two forms. Like, Megaguirus has 3 forms, and Mothra has 2. And the back of my DVD even has a little trademark of the monster. I just look at it and I read it Amoebas, since it was from Space Amoebas. I thought Space Amoebas actually came out in 1970. That was significant because there's a line in the movie where the people say when they're looking at the dead beached mutant turtle, not Gamera, somebody calls it Amoebas, and they say, "Oh, a specialist, huh?" And there's a comment made that the last time they saw one of these was 17 years ago, which from 2004 would have put it in 1987. And 1987 is 17 years removed from 1970, which makes me think the Megalomatata surfaces in Japan every 17 years. And just my little factoid for you.
Okay. Maybe we can look that up here in a minute. It's possible that the 71 dates for the U.S. release. But
I can't believe it was even released in the U.S. I've never seen it. I don't ever remember it on TNT Monster Vision.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's on DVD.
Space. Yeah. All right. Then my last note from this interview, which I found interesting, that kind of, again, highlights some of the stuff we've already been talking about. So the monster battles in Tokyo S.O.S. benefit from a return to emphasizing old-fashioned miniature and man-in-a-suit effects. Unlike Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, which I'm assuming mean against Mechagodzilla, there are no ridiculous CGI shots of Kiryu leaping through the air, looking like a video game character who wandered onto the big screen by mistake. Asked if this emphasis reflects his personal preference, Tezuka said, quote, "As a kid, after watching Godzilla films, I would go home and play with the plastic Godzilla toys and dolls. Because the Godzilla special effects are not computer generated, they're, quote, real. So I can relate to the toys being real and the movie Godzilla being real. I think computer graphics take away from that, especially in Tokyo S.O.S. The answer to your question can be seen." So yeah, this guy highlights what we already knew about, basically, that he likes the physical action going on.
You even compared Mechagodzilla's glossy finish in the last movie to a toy version of it instead of actual metal.
Well, but I mean, I thought Godzilla himself looked more shiny in the last movie.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate the less emphasis on CGI when it came to Mecha G's movements. A little bit less Smash Brothers this time around.
Yeah. So I don't have too many CGI comments in this film, but is there a reason why all the explosions above water look fine and everything underwater looks like crap?
You know, Giant Monsters All Out Attack probably had the best underwater shots in the lighting and everything else, because it looked like they just filmed it regular, but they put some kind of a filter over the final image. But yeah, everything underwater in every other one of these Millennium movies has looked the worst thing in the movie.
Yeah, and I just, the explosion specifically, I don't understand. Like, just have an explosion. Like you
You can
don't
just
need
make a bunch of
the special.
bubbles if you want to, right?
Well, it'll have fire. I mean, it may
Oh
not
yeah.
last. Use your CGI to make the fire last a little longer. But it's
Yeah.
like don't just. They look like sparklers going off down there. But yeah. All right. So in terms of the plot, like there's not a whole lot going on in this movie, so I think we're going to go through this a little bit quicker than
Oh,
we normally
can
do.
I interject? I read on Wikipedia that the director was given 3 different scripts or story pitches from Toho, and he thought all of them were terrible. And apparently, he wrote a new story outline overnight, and it got approved. So that I think feeds into the light on story discussion.
Okay. Which I think. I think it's fine. I think a lot of times they try to jam too much subplot in these Godzilla movies.
There was too much in the last movie. I'll give you that with the plant and the mama and all that. But it worked, I thought. But it was a lot to fit in. And
they already had. Again, I don't know if I would enjoy this movie had I not seen the last movie. But having seen the last movie, I didn't need all the backstory. Like you know what I'm saying.
True.
Like I don't think they did much to help people get caught up to speed. Like they really,
even though we have a whole new cast of characters, which is also an old character that's brought back into the fold.
Like I think this movie. I mean, I don't know why they didn't make a 2 to 3 minute recap to start the movie off.
You would have expected that.
Because instead it starts off with basically some tech scene of some coding where it looks like they're fixing. I guess we no longer need to call him Kiryu. I'm sure we will. Mecha-G, and then they show Godzilla open his eye, and then they show the new character Mothra, flying through the air, being identified as a UFO, and then having a little tangling up with some fighter jets.
The Xenomorph Defense Force shooting at the UFO.
Yeah. But and then that leads into the title scene, which you mentioned earlier. You got 3 colors coming on screen, and then that simplified U.S. title, so to speak. It was a neat visual.
So
that stuff.
We cut to the home of Professor Dr. Chuzo, and I've forgotten my Japanese geography, but I forget how far away this house is from any urban area, but it looked like it was very rural, out in the mountains, and yet later in the film he has to evacuate and he's in the city. So I wasn't sure about that, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, it seems far enough. It seems far enough out where later one of the characters there asked how his vacation was because he could tell he was distracted. So it's it would at least be considered like a Gatlinburg cabin, kind of maybe not in the middle of nowhere, but maybe an hour out, so kind of thing.
So the whole Chuzo family of the dynamic, I'm still not quite sure who's related to who and how among these 3 or 4 people.
So yeah, I'm pretty sure. I think. Sorry. So let's back up. So basically, there's 3 main characters that we meet here. You have Shinichi Kujo, which is we'll get back to him in a minute. He's the older guy. Then he's got his nephew Yoshi.
Yeah,
and I think it's yes. And then there's a kid. What's his name? Shun, who I'm pretty sure is the grandson of the old guy.
Yes.
Because they all call each other uncles, basically. So that's my attempt at the family tree.
Yoshi doesn't like it when the grandson calls him uncle.
Yeah.
Is that
I think that's tied to the subplot they got going on later, which really doesn't come up. So it's maybe the only time we talk about it, where he is fascinated with machines and doesn't care about people. When he's that girl who kind of likes him says, "You don't even look at women; you look at robots." It's like, so I think maybe it's tied to he just not wanting to get emotionally attached to a person. I don't know. They don't really flesh it out, but
yeah, there is, I think, a forced member of the Chuzo family simply because when he's evacuating his home, it looks like his daughter is there trying to get him to leave, but then we never see or hear from her again. Maybe I misread that.
I think I just took it as a servant, but yeah, you can be right. I mean, I don't know. I didn't think too hard about it. This is the first time I've thought about it, actually.
And again, whose mother is she? Is she the grandson's mother?
Well, I mean, she
But-
didn't seem too concerned with where the kid was.
Fair enough. No, we never see her again. Okay,
But,
so Chuzo, man, what a classic legacy character. Are we talking about Mothra, the original Mothra yet, or are we gonna jump into that?
Yeah, I say let's do that. So the movie says basically, all right, this back up. So they're in this little cabin thing, and then the Mothra twins, they call fairies in this movie,
Yeah,
they show up, and they have a message for him. And the last time, which he recognizes, he recognizes them, and they give enough information to say that he landed on he met them on Infant Island 43 years ago. He was a language expert on an expedition, and then he was, in light of all that stuff, Mothra destroyed Tokyo. So Mothra is coming into this movie as a villain or a heel character. Doesn't really maintain, but that's the initial thing. Now, I am not real familiar with the Mothra movie. I'm gonna let you pick it up from here. Did they follow the plot? Did they change things? Is that pretty much it?
I don't think there's any contradictions in the lore because we do remember the previous movie when the Prime Minister, the first Prime Minister, the lady, was talking with the Minister of Science, who becomes Prime Minister Igashari or something like that. And the statement was Godzilla came in 54, Mothra ravaged Tokyo. I think they blamed it on hydrogen bomb testing. And then the Gargantuan or the Bigfoot, they say they took him down with their Maser weapons. So just because they say that doesn't necessarily make it true, right? They're the politicians, the prime ministers. It's their perspective on how things work.
Right.
So in the 1964 Mothra, you had a specialized team that go to Infant Island, and the reports were that there was there was a team there that crash landed, and they were helped by the natives, even though everybody thought the island was deserted. So they send a special team there, and they take along Dr. Chuzo, who's their language expert at the time. And a few other news reporters are there, and you have your Marion C. Cooper, or whoever you want to have, like your King Kong equivalent, somebody who's just there looking for something he can capture and take back to the mainland and put it on display and make a show of it. And so you have several run-ins where ultimately it's Dr. Chuzo who gets tied up by a plant monster or something like that. Forget the details. And he first encounters the two fairy women, possibly different fairy women than the one in this movie. I wasn't quite sure about the dub and the Japanese run on that. And then the rest of his team discover the fairy women, and these two showmen, Barnum Bailey types, they grab the little fairies. The special effect is not great when they grab them, but they pick them up and they try to take them, but the natives show up. I don't want to say it's blackface, but it's some kind of Japanese equivalent of blackface that they do with the natives on Infant Island. They're regular sized people, they're there, but they show up real ominous. They never try to attack anybody. They just sort of keep the music going, or they play a little beat, and eventually everybody gets intimidated and they let the fairies go. But eventually these scallywag types, they do decide they're going to capture these fairies anyway. And somehow Dr. Chuzo takes a flight home early. I wasn't quite sure about that, but he goes back early, and then I think the news reporter guy goes with him. And before the rest of the team can go, the villains capture the fairies and they start shooting all the natives that are around them. So they rack up a big pile of bodies, take the fairies off the island and go back to the Japanese mainland and start doing a tour and putting them on show. And the fairies sing, Masara, no. however the rest of it goes. They keep on singing this little jingle there, very catchy. And that's their way of calling Mothra, who I don't quite know. I wouldn't think owes its origin to the H-bomb, but Mothra at this point is inside a giant egg.
It sounds like
And
he owes his origin to the King Kong movie based on this plot.
oh, it's very much a King Kong. In fact, I will say that is Mothra a 1964 movie? I was trying to remember. 1961
well,
in Japan. Okay, they said the 43 years, but
yeah.
it is a surprisingly high budget looking movie for something that comes out of 1961 Japanese cinema. I think they had a special agreement with another studio. It was sort of a co-op, and they have a big dance scene with the natives and the fairies before all this takes place. It looks like a large stage. It looks like something you might see out of an MGM movie from around that time that's trying to be some kind of a would-be epic. And it's in Toho scope. I don't know if it was the first Toho scope movie, but everything in the 50s was tiny little frame. This is nice widescreen. The color is very vibrant. I was surprised at how good the movie overall held up. But yeah, so Mothra comes out of the egg, and it's the larval form. And Dr. Chuzo and his team are trying their best to break the fairies out of captivity. They're trying to intervene with politicians. They're trying any way they can. Dr. Chuzo has 2 or 3 kids. I don't remember much about them. Maybe 2 boys and a girl. One of the boys tries to help them break the fairies out and go after the bad guys. Mothra shows up in the larval form, starts destroying stuff, looking for the fairies, because the fairies tell Chuzo Mothra will come for us, and we hate it because you all are going to get destroyed when Mothra comes to retrieve us. So it's made clear throughout the movie, Mothra is only there to home in on the fairies and bring them home. And eventually the Japanese army shoots Mothra, the larva, with everything they can think of, and it cocoons overnight. And the bad guys run off to Spain or something. They get on a Pan American airplane, take the ferries with them, and Chuzo and his people, they chase the bad guys all the way to whatever country this was. I can't remember the name of it. And Mothra comes out in Japan in the butterfly form after the cocoon comes out, and they need to find a way to get Mothra over to the country they're in now. And they realize when they see the sign of the cross and the way the light hits it, that the symbol for Mothra, which they have on a little tablet, which comes up in S.O.S. too, it is the way you call Mothra, other than the song. I should note that the fairies in the Mothra movie were trapped in a case that prevented their telepathic waves from getting out. Don't ask me how they knew. I mean, it's like a bunch of cellophane, but they say it telepathy blocking, or they sing, but they also have telepathy with Mothra anyway. They decide to paint Mothra's symbol on the airport, and that allows Mothra not to destroy the city, but to land safely, and they let the fairies run out to the landed Mothra, and then they fly away. So that pretty much sums up 1961 Mothra as well as I can do that.
Okay. So yeah, it makes sense. From the Japan's perspective, they're getting destroyed, but he's just looking for the fairies. All right, so back to S.O.S.
S.O.S. Help!
They basically say...
Maybe that's it. The fairies are the S.O.S. somehow. Help us, Mothra.
Yeah, I don't think they try too hard in these titles. But so they give this message to Chuzo that they should never have been messing with the dead, and Godzilla's bones need to be returned to the ocean, or else Mothra will be forced to declare war against humanity. A very
That's
empty
a twist.
threat, by the way.
I wasn't sure how they got to that point.
Well, they didn't do anything with it.
Well,
it was a threat that completely backwards later on.
Did they ever say Mothra was gonna be the threat?
Yes.
Okay, I thought it was just the idea that this is what brings the other Godzilla after you. But I had forgotten that somehow Mothra was in on this blood feud too.
Yeah,
Huh.
I mean, it's more of a judgment thing. Like, you're not supposed to touch the dead. Like, Mothra is this, it's like Mother Earth, so to speak. Gotta keep everything in line. I don't know.
I guess they went with that in King of the Monsters, the
Yeah.
Warner
But,
Brothers movie, didn't they? It's
yeah, I
kind
think
of a
so.
mess at points, but eh.
Yeah. So then basically they say if the Godzilla's bones are returned to the sea, the Mothra will defend Japan from the current Godzilla. And
Good
then
luck with that,
they,
Mothra.
yeah, yeah. But anyways, then the fairies depart. They leave with Mothra. There's these things go about bit back and forth. They're repairing Kiryu around the same time. He's almost ready, but they don't have his absolute zero weapon ready. And whether it's, I can't remember if it's here later, but basically they have budget restraints. They can't afford the big diamond that they need. So they're gonna ultimately they're gonna put the giant maser thing in there again.
Huh, which they said in the last movie was ineffective against Godzilla, but they seem to have changed their mind on this one.
Yeah, and I think it's tied to real quick on Godzilla's design. They did make a new suit that was basically the same design, but it had a big scar on the chest.
Yeah.
And I think their idea was, the masers may work due to his. It doesn't look like he's fully healed.
Yeah, it's
So,
fair.
um, so they're doing the repairs at around the same time. You have the original members of the Kiryu squad. We see all three of them. This makes no sense, but they're being sent to the U.S. for further training, even though they're worried about Godzilla attacking again.
It's
So
been
they'll
how
get a
many
whole
months
new
since the
crew.
that's the other thing, the timeline is it's been several months
I think it's been a
where
year.
they've been doing nothing but repairing the Mecha-G, and they've replaced the arm. I'm curious if they use the bones again when they replaced the arm, or if they made do without. But you would have thought if they wanted to send their special heroic pilots for special training, they would have done it while they were repairing the machine.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know why they made new characters. I mean, this movie would have worked with the original three characters in it.
Yeah, they
So I
wouldn't
don't know
have
if it was a
as much of
budget
a
issue.
storyline.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know. It just and I don't know if those three scripts that you were talking about had new characters either. But so, anyways, uh, only one of them really has a speaking role for the most part. Kiryu's
Akane.
former Akane is in the hangar looking at Mecha G, kind of saying goodbye, so to speak. And Yoshi comes in. He has a conversation with her, and Akane remarks that she feels sorry for Kiryu, as she doesn't think he wants to fight Godzilla anymore. Though it was pretty clear in the first movie that he didn't want to fight Godzilla in the first place at all. So a little bit of a rewriting of history, so to speak. And then she asks Yoshi to take good care of Kairu, and then she leaves. Dramatic pause, continues to leave, and she's gone.
Never to be seen again. I wonder what that training was like in America, and what team was doing the training. Would it have been the team that helped them fight the 1998 Godzilla?
Well,
Or wait, that's a different.
I think they
That's
were
that.
practicing based on the timeline. I think they were playing the Super Nintendo Super Godzilla game and doing the tactical warfare.
Okay. Yeah, that's fascinating though. You bring in a rookie crew to pilot the repaired Mechagodzilla, and you're hoping it works because you sent your previous crew for special training for the next mission. Is that? No, it's a year. So, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah, they're
there's
supposed to
got
be
to be a
gone another
reason.
year.
There's got to be a reason, especially for them not to keep Akane. If any of the characters you would keep, you think you would have kept her.
She
But
could have
yeah,
filled in very neatly for the new female lead, Azusa. I mean, really, there's no excuse why you wouldn't just use her again, even if she's not the main character. They clearly didn't care about the love triangle with the scientist from the last movie for Tokumutsu Yuhara, because he's not seen or referenced at all in this movie.
it's not really. It's just not clear. I mean, maybe it was a budget thing. Maybe these actors are cheaper. I mean, who knows?
They must have had him under contract to come back in some role.
Yeah, it almost makes me wonder if they filmed that scene first, just to get him, off the books.
Huh.
All right, so at this point, you have a little bit out of order, but it's going back and forth. You have a giant carcass of a turtle, a gigantic turtle, washing ashore in Japan.
I'll tell you what.
Gamera. And they don't spend too much time with this. I'm not really sure. See, that's the thing. It's got to be a reference to Gamera, because otherwise you don't need this scene. It doesn't have to be a giant turtle.
I agree. It shouldn't have been Anguirus. That would have been disrespectful.
Why do all these people care so much about Anguirus? Yeah. Everybody wanted to include him all the time. It's like, why?
I love that little guy. He doesn't do much. He's lost every fight he's been in, but he bites.
Him and Manila have a good fight.
Yeah. He bites.
So, creature has large claw marks in its neck. So the AMF concludes Godzilla did it. They're kind of leaping a little bit there, but yeah.
Hungry guy. There's clearly a lot of giant monsters in the history of this world, so who knows?
Yeah, it could have been Frankenstein.
Yeah.
So then
another Bigfoot.
AMF rushes to complete Kiryu or Mechagodzilla in preparation for the arrival, and they basically say he ain't gonna be completely ready, but he'll be functional.
Good. Maybe that's why they're sending the backup crew in.
Yeah.
Hey, you're expendable, folks. Go ahead. We should add that our boy Yoshi is not on the flight crew or anything. He's a grease monkey. He's Air Force ground crew, basically.
Yeah, he's tech maintenance. So he's a maintenance guy.
Pretty good at it.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
So then our old man meets with the Prime Minister.
Chuzo.
And he tells him that he needs to get rid of this project per the warning from the fairies. And Igarashi acknowledges the concern, but states too much been invested to scrap it now. But he does say as soon as Mechagodzilla kills Godzilla, he will end the project.
You can at least understand his political point of view. They don't make him into a bad guy in this point.
No, and even later on, spoiler, when he recognizes they need to end the project, he still gives the last warning. Hey, we'll end it right after this is done. But we're too far in right now. So then right after that, Godzilla enters Tokyo Bay. Again, this is a little bouncing around here, but they're cutting back and forth. He makes quick work of all the defenses, and he is moving towards. He's basically coming to the hangar where Mechagodzilla is. Another reference to him chasing the bones, basically, which they made a few references to in this movie. Yeah. At the same time, Tokyo is being evacuated, and the dude's grandson, Shun, is missing during the evacuation. And he spends quite a bit of time running around looking for him, but eventually finds him creating the Mothra symbol using desk from a school. And I guess he was inspired by the story that his grandfather had told him about how they painted the symbol on the airport runway back in '61, like you were talking about earlier.
He had all
as soon as it's finished, and then as soon as it's finished, a reporter videotapes it. Apparently, Mothra saw the videotape and arrived immediately to tell them that even though they have not put the bones back in the sea, Mothra's here to help.
I'm assuming this is the same Mothra. There's different ones, but the one that opens this movie is probably the same one that closed out the last movie.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows? But it's plot hole, though, regardless. So Mothra goes to Tokyo, attacks Godzilla. Mothra does okay for a little while, but eventually gets its leg bit off, and Godzilla's overpowering her.
She's down on the ground.
Yeah. So I will say, while Mothra is fighting Godzilla, they do not send off the Mechagodzilla. They are holding off. Now, whether it's really because they're wanting to listen to the fairies, or it's because the Prime Minister's son was going to be the pilot, I'm not sure. So they're basically saying, we're going to hold off and see what happens here. But once the obvious becomes obvious, they do go ahead and launch Mechagodzilla into battle. And it does not take long for Godzilla to knock the thing out and take out one of his eyes.
I was amused by the point where Mechagodzilla stands behind a building and fires all his missiles that hone in on Godzilla around the building.
No, that was a good shot. I like that one. That was good.
There's no point that I remember anybody walking through a building that doesn't collapse in this movie.
The special effects were so much different in this movie, and reading between the lines, it sounds like the director, he was not overly pleased with some of the effects in the first movie.
But, it feels like he's doing what he wants to do with the set. They're making the most of this little cityscape. It would have made a lot more sense if Godzilla wants the bones to send Mecha G further out into the countryside and have the fight there, but it would not look near as fun if you don't fall over all the buildings.
Yeah. See here. Same time, we take a trip to the island, and you have two Mothra
one egg
larva hatching.
But, yeah, two larvae out of one egg in the.
Yes.
For whatever reason, they did not include the tribal people. I know most of them died in the 1961 movie, but not all of them either. So,
well, you also, I think at this point they're getting away from the whatever you would call the equivalent of that, in terms of blackface.
Well,
so interesting note: the twins are not identical twins in this movie. One of them has an armband on the right arm, and one has an armband on the left arm.
What if they bought those armbands at the same package and just gave one to each other?
Well, they also have, and this is the first time. Where's my note here? I was telling you about it earlier. Here we go. Yeah. So these twins in the Japanese audio have different names. They actually have individual names. One's Hio or Io. It's Hio.
Oh.
And then the other one is Mana or Mana.
Oh.
And they do speak each other. They do speak each other's names on screen while the larvae are hatching. But the English dub instead has them both remark that the larvae are twins. So I'm not sure why they made that edit. Also, I didn't catch this when I was watching it, just in those notes. These twins are non-identical. One's a male and one's a female. The male one has darker skin and more pronounced tusks and tail spikes. And I think this is the first confirmed instance of a male Mothra.
Well, I don't recall from the 60s films the genders on the two larvae. So it was either
you
Godzilla
just assume
versus...
that all... Well, you just assume all Mothra are female, though.
You probably do, but yeah, you're right. It's hard to understand a male Mothra, but I don't know how they reproduce either.
I always felt there was a connection between the twin Mothras and the twin girls, or the fairies. But yeah. Guess I overreached on that. We're a more progressive society by 2003.
So let's see.
All right, so where are we at? So those Mothra start swimming to Tokyo to aid their mother. As soon as they get there, of course, Godzilla starts firing atomic breath at them. But then the wounded mother, sacrifices herself to save them. Pretty neat fire effect there.
Does that power up the larva when she disintegrates?
At least inspired them. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Maybe not. I've never really understood Mothra's powers.
All monsters attack. The living monster gets a power up when the other one dies. But
well, he didn't like that director. So yeah, unclear though. Like I said, I never really understood Mothra's powers. They tend to change around too much.
Oh yeah, we should note, how does Mothra fight Godzilla? It's stated that she throws her scales at him, and that's a last resort.
Yeah, she don't do
much.
With
the wings?
No, she kind of picked... It was established very quickly that Mothra was no match for Godzilla in this movie.
Now, my memory as a Godzilla watching fan is that Godzilla traditionally has more trouble against larva Mothra than he does against fully grown Mothra.
I agree. He gets webbed up real quick.
He does not like being sticky.
Nope.
Can't blame him. And in the previous movie where you had two larvae, Godzilla killed one of them. But in this movie, he is not able to take one out. And so he is definitely at a disadvantage when you have multiple Mothra larvae shooting him, webbing him up at the same time. And he's able to break out of the trap a couple times, but I think the third time they surround him. They're actually able to web him up pretty good. But we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves.
Well, they had reason to be able to web him up real good. So Yoshi, he finds his family, gets them to safety, and then he goes and he volunteers to fix Mecha-G and repair it manually so that the pilots can take it back over. So he does get inside. He had to go in like a different door because damage to one door.
That motorcycle through the sewer scene was fun. I like that. Subway.
Yeah. And that's another spot. He's getting an assist from the fairies to get to his tools and get to the actual Mechagodzilla. So the fairies seem to be on board with Mecha-G at this point. Anyways, he's able to fix him enough where he gets restarted, and only he's inside of him. He's not able to get back out of Mechagodzilla due to a door being one of the openings being broken. Yeah, the hatch is busted up. So he basically says he lies, says he's safe, but he's really not. So Mecha-G gets up. He goes back into the fight. Yoshi's bouncing around inside Mecha-G.
How did Akane do it? Did she have a chair she was able to sit in?
Yeah, I think she was in a chair, which obviously they didn't tell him where that was. But so then the neat effect on Mecha-G, he turns his hand into a drill, stabs Godzilla in his scar area.
That was rough.
And spins it around and makes Godzilla's not happy with that. And then he enters, what do you call it, the mega hyper maser beams. He fires them off into the open wound. Godzilla's great pain.
Wait, not the central, not the super maser in the chest, but other masers. Is that what we're talking about?
I think it was both actually, wasn't it? Didn't he do the mouth or the eyes, whatever it came out of in this one, plus the chest?
I keep thinking they tried to activate Super Maser and it got overridden, but maybe I've forgotten the details.
This time it worked. It worked. And then that's what the larvae cover him up with the not webbing, but that's what I'm calling it.
Yeah.
And then they give him the command to finish him off.
Oh no! Now hold on.
Fatality.
Yoshi's KO'd at some point, isn't he?
Yeah, and he has, yes. So and this all ties together. So you have the main guys. They hear the twins' voice again.
Don't do it. Put the bones back.
And then they ignore it and they say, "Hey, this is the last mission. Finish them off, and then we're disbanding the program." And at the same time, Yoshi's blacked out. It has like a dream sequence where he seems to see the history of Kiryu / Mecha-G. He wakes up and he apologizes. And around all this time, and it's a little unclear if it's the call to kill Godzilla or if it is Yoshi apologizing inside. But the spirit of the original Godzilla takes over Mecha-G once more. And that's where the hyper maser beam doesn't work. He hits the button.
Kiryu!
And it does not work. Kiryu's back.
We do get one more flashback of Akane as well, because that's when Yoshi finally puts it all together.
Yes. So Kiryu takes his matter to his own hand. He picks up Godzilla in his arms.
What a weird scene.
And he's going to go basically put himself back into the floor of the sea and take this Godzilla with him at the same time. I'm not sure if it's because he's friends with the people now, or just wanting to save his friend, his brother, son, whatever you want to call it. A little unclear.
There is a line that all he wants to do is return to sleep. That's from his point of view. But yeah, he's thinking enough he's going to take Godzilla with him.
And whether it's to spare Godzilla from getting killed by the humans or whether it's just because he wants to get, I don't know. It's a little unclear. But he's flying off with him.
Now Yoshi's ready to sacrifice himself.
Yeah, so at this point they figure out that Yoshi's still inside of him. He can't get the door open, but they're flying around and they're able to shoot the door open from a distance. I'm not sure what Mecha-G thought of that. But Yoshi's still unable to get there. But at some point, Mecha-G figures out that Yoshi can't get to the hole. So he turns himself upside down. Yoshi drops out the hole. And on the way out, he says, "Sayonara, Yoshito."
Oh my goodness, the TV screen. What?
Yes. It's... you just can't have a Godzilla movie where they don't jump the shark, can you?
And then I guess Yoshi is hanging on to the outside of the hatch. And even though the airplane is getting underneath Mecha-G, Yoshi lets go and somehow makes it safely through every single spike on Mechagee's back. He goes between all of them.
So I appreciate the fact that they did play momentum in a normal way there, because I just thought they'd have him drop that straight down.
Yeah.
But so they actually tried to use real physics, and it was a neat visual. I didn't expect it. Very unrealistic, but neat nonetheless. And then the pilot, forget which one it was.
Well,
pops out of his
Azusa is the
thing.
pilot.
Yeah, so he pops out of his little plane, catches them, and they parachute down.
The gunner is the son. You know what we said, the whatever. So that was the guy who was supposed to operate Mechagee, and he's in the eject seat. So somehow, as he's going up, he catches Yoshi, who's going sideways and a little bit down. Well, I guess more down, but a little bit sideways. And it safely, everybody meets right when the parachute comes up. Does that sound about right?
Yeah. Very unrealistic, but, it works.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
So then they lose contact to the Godzillas. They eventually just too deep in the water.
We should note that before Mechagee went underwater, he extended several cables on top of Godzilla's cocoon.
Oh, yeah, had to have good grip. Nice firm grip.
I thought it was also suggesting it was his way of trying to make sure Godzilla doesn't come back for a while.
Yeah, probably.
Maybe.
Or just to make sure he gets to the bottom. But yeah, I don't know if the cocoon stuff holds up underwater.
No clue.
Yeah.
I'm not remembering, does the cocoon stuff put the person to sleep when they're wrapped up, suspended state?
I feel like it's, at least in one movie, that was referenced. Maybe it was a video game. I don't even know. But it's not something mentioned in this one, so the audience wouldn't know. Almost like it was like a poison almost. But
all right.
So anyways, that's kind of the end of Godzilla in this movie, for the most part. The Prime Minister declares a hollow victory. The fairies are happy that the spirit of the first Godzilla is resting again, and they float back to Infant Island with the larva. Yes. And then we have a closing scene where they go to or this is post-credit kind of thing, where they go to a laboratory and you see several tanks holding DNA of various kaiju, including the original Godzilla and the fake Gamera specimen, I believe it was.
I was not sure what else besides the Godzilla DNA was in there. The Godzilla canister, there was a 1954 number on it, but there was also a note that it was gathered around 1999, so that would have been...
It's only when they got the bones.
Well, they got the bones in 98, right? Hold on a second. Because then Godzilla showed up in 99.
It could have been the new Godzilla, but I just assumed it was from the bones. And they hadn't got
There
rid
is
of it.
A scientist who walks past the little area before the security door closes. I like to think that's Uhura from the previous movie. The interspinal cell for the preservation of species and bio-robots and all that. That's my fan theory.
Yeah, and I think there is something... Let's see here. I read something somewhere that had more explanation. There was some more monsters whose DNA would have been in there, but I don't know if that was official canon or if that was just fan fiction or what. I can't find the note.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, I kind of liked the ending, but I felt like they didn't really close out the movie very spectacularly. So Yoshi getting out of the Mechagee looked fake enough where I didn't really appreciate it for what they were trying to go for. That killed it too. But yeah. But the idea...
When did Godzilla 1954 learn English? Maybe it was part of the coding.
Part of the tech. But
the DNA changes they made to him. Oh my gosh. Did they make him a Godzilla-human hybrid somehow? Did you ever think about that?
He's a Termazilla. Or a Godzillinator.
All we needed was a thumbs up as he sunk into the ocean. That's all we needed.
Well, the other thing, too, is they kind of retconned it where this original Godzilla has a real soul and not just not just a force of nature, but somehow he turned into a good force of nature.
He's seen some stuff.
They made him, but they really baby faced him up. So I don't know. I think this is my least favorite version of Mechagodzilla. I will say that.
Oh,
Mechagodzilla is supposed to be a heel.
Yeah, but the Millennium series has experimented with changing affiliations of different creatures here and there. So,
yeah, here's the problem with this movie. And for the record, I think it's a good movie. Overall, I give both movies together like a solid B minus. Like, not bad movies, they're good movies. They have someone who probably appreciates the idea of Godzilla's revenge of the Manila. He probably likes the Manila character, and he's giving carte blanche, interpretation to redo Mechagodzilla. Like, Mechagodzilla movies, like, they're inherently should be more serious in tone, because this is like, you could argue whether it's him or King Ghidorah, but like, which one's like the true arch villain,
Yeah.
One of these two monsters is considered the Joker, the Batman. So it's like, they got to be the bad guy.
Well, I guess Mecha G is more built to be the foil of Godzilla. It's specifically built to counter stuff Godzilla does.
Joker.
Or at least that's the idea.
He's the Joker. And I do like the idea of them making a Mechagodzilla and then it turning bad because they lose control. I think that works 100% of the time. But
yeah,
this whole, like, I even like the idea of the bones. Like, I like that. Like, I like that. But this movie, I just think it doesn't. He's too friendly. Like, when he comes back the first time when he took over, he was a monster.
Oh yeah.
And this one, they give him a little scar instead of the bright red eye, and he just goes straight into like being a good guy kind of thing.
His relationships with the two human leads are very curious because they are not relationships that are earned in that sense. A little bit more Akane, a lot less so with Yoshi, but you're not understanding why there's such a bond unless the fairies somehow intervened in this, and they're the ones that are somehow really connecting the soul of dead Godzilla to things.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like I said, I like the movie. Didn't like the ending. I think the director, probably his nature is to be a little less serious, but which is fine. But I don't know. I don't know.
We must live in the time that nature allows. English dub.
Yeah, it's just so hard apparently to make good endings on movies. I mean, there's tons and tons of movies that we would complain about that for. So
I'm cool with this one. This is the grandest Godzilla epic we've watched yet. The Kiryu saga.
Low bar.
And like you said, it spans so many other Toho movies that.
Well, you put this more epic than the last movie? Or the last full movie?
Well, you mean Godzilla All Monsters Attack?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know that Godzilla All Monsters Attack earned the lore. I think the lore is there, but it just feels really rushed from Baragon to Mothra to Ghidorah.
Yeah,
it has
the
potential, but it just doesn't have as much room to breathe, I think.
I agree. I think it got the characterizations of the monsters better, though.
All right.
But anyway, I get what you're saying. I think they're comparable quality, honestly. If those two directors had been able to get along, I wonder if they could have made a real good one.
Huh. Yeah. The road not taken.
Yeah. Well, you got any other thoughts on this film, Adam?
Well, I guess there's only one more left in the Millennium series, then.
Yeah.
Final Wars.
Final Wars.
I was thinking maybe it would make more sense to watch a lot more movies, since Final Wars is less a conclusion to the Millennium and sort of a conclusion to all Godzilla, but maybe we'll just watch it, and if we decide we want to say more about it after watching a bunch of really low-tier Toho movies, maybe we can go back to it.
Yeah, we can always re-reference it, but yeah, I think we should go ahead and conclude the Millennium series, almost like a season 1 for the podcast. But yeah, and it's a fun movie, so it'd be good. Low on plot.
Oh yeah, yeah, very much so. Get this thing out of the way.
Take a different direction on that review, anyways. But yeah,
and then I guess by the end of the month, Godzilla X Kong is in theaters.
That is coming up soon, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know when I'll go see it, but I thought it was maybe I don't know. Do they release these things on Thursdays now or Wednesdays? So
Yeah, I don't know. This past month, I've been in and out of just being sick from sinuses with all this weather. Where
Mm.
I've only been doing the bare essentials in life. Plus this, I don't know if I'd call this a bare essential, but I've been making time for it. But between just keeping everybody afloat here and doing this, I've been mostly taking sinus snaps between it.
Oh yeah.
But so hopefully I'm over that. This weather just square away. But yeah, so I'm not sure anyways on the date. Let me see if I'll look that up real quick while we're wrapping up. So it releases March 29th.
That's right before Easter, then.
Yep, 3.5 weeks. So, all right, Adam. Well, it's been a pleasure. And thanks everybody for listening. And we will see you guys next time.
Sayonara, Joseph
Bye-bye.
San.